in Qatar over whether a second extension can be agreed, something Dr. Margaret Harris from the World Health Organization says is vital.
Every day of the truce has meant the health system has been able to claw back some of its capacity. So we were down to 8 hospitals. We've now got 15 that are partially functional.
Aaron David Miller is a former Middle East advisor at the US State Department. He's told LBC Israel is likely to change its approach.
Whether or not the Israelis will be able to achieve their military objectives, eradicating Hamas's military infrastructure above ground, below ground, killing its senior leadership, and regaining as many hostages as they possibly can, is highly arguable. But I think that the administration, Joe Biden personally, still committed to helping the Israelis deal Hamas a devastating defeat.
Labour's accusing the government of losing control of UK borders. Rishi Sunak says he's already taken action after latest figures showed a rise in net migration, but he's told the Commons that's yet to be felt. A 13-year-old who killed a woman after running her over with her own car will serve a 2-year prison sentence. Marcia Grant, who was 60, was seriously injured outside her home in Sheffield in April. British Gymnastics has introduced new safeguarding rules in the wake of a review which found systematic abuse. Coaches will be prevented from weighing gymnasts and no child under 12 will be allowed to be taken out of school to train. And Nottingham City Council has declared itself effectively bankrupt. It says it can't deliver on its legal requirement to balance the budget this year. In the city, the FTSE 100 has closed down 29 points at 74.25. The pound buys $1.26 and €1.15. LBC weather. Snow showers in eastern areas tonight. Some rain along some coastal areas with patchy rain in the west. A low of -4. Patchy rain continuing in the west tomorrow and remaining cloudy in the far south. Mostly bright elsewhere with some showers in the far north and northeast. A high of 6 Celsius. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Charlotte Morgan.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation. Cross Question with Iain Dale.
Hello, a very good evening. 3 minutes past 8 on LBC. Welcome to Wednesday's Cross Question. We have an excellent panel for you tonight. Mind you, I do say that every night, obviously. Stella Creasy is here, Labour MP for Walthamstow. Yeah. Guto Harri, former Downing Street Director of Communications when Boris Johnson was Prime Minister. He hosts the Global Player podcast series Unprecedented Inside Downing Street. It's very, very sweary, it has to be said. Jim Shannon is DUP MP for Strangford in Northern Ireland. He speaks for the party on health and human rights. And Martha Gill is here, columnist for The Observer. They're here to take your calls, 0345 6060 973, or you can text on 84850 or say, Alexa, send a comment to LBC. And do watch us on Global Player.
Call 0345 6060 973. Tweet at LBC. Text 84850. Cross Question with Iain Dale. This is LBC.
Right, let's go to our first call. It's Robbie in Chelmsford. Hello, Robbie.
Hello, excellent panel. Hello, Iain. In 2016, excellent, Iain. In 2016, I voted to leave the EU. By the time we left the EU, I personally regretted my decision, but accepted responsibility for it. Recently, Ursula von der Leyen suggested that the EU would be willing to accept the UK back, in fact, would welcome them back. And a YouGov poll this morning showed that over 2/3 of Britons, when asked, would accept a return to the single market, even if that meant free movement. So my question is, when can we expect our politicians to reflect the public mood?
Guto Harri, you were a prominent Remainer, I seem to remember.
Yeah, I thought it was a very bad idea at the time, an act of self-harm, and my view has not changed. In fact, I don't feel smug at all because I feel a bit sort of depressed about the whole thing, but I don't think it's worked out. I don't even know anymore in what way it's meant to make sense. Even Nigel Farage doesn't seem to think that it makes sense, nor Jacob Rees-Mogg. They all say that we haven't got the right sort of Brexit. But on the going back, I think going back, you should imagine if you'd actually left the marital home. I don't know if you're married or not, but if you've left the marital home to move in with a young lover, and then you decide that wasn't really such a good idea, I'd like to come home now and get back into the bedroom and hang out with the kids and you. That's how easy it'll be to get back into the European Union in any situation that isn't sort of more grueling and painful than being outside. So much as it pains me to say this, I have no anticipation of us being back in the European Union for the rest of my days. Hopefully my kids will live to see that happy day, but not while I'm on this planet.
Stella Creasy.
I was just checking whether we were pre or post watershed with the analogies that Guto's made. I sit here, I'm the chair of the Labour Movement for Europe, right? I'm with you on the I'd never inhaled on Brexit, but I'm also with you that...
I got very high.
You got very high. Yeah. I can imagine. And I'm really, really nervous about already the damage that Brexit has done and the damage that is going to be done. Next year, the government is intending to bring in a charge of £43 for every single consignment that comes into the country. They've admitted themselves that it is an inflationary measure. And when I say consignment, that literally means if you have a truck that has apples and oranges in, you've got the charge for both the apples and the oranges. It's going to be a nightmare for small businesses, let alone all the jobs we've already lost, all the trade that's down, the idea that somehow you can fight geography in terms of your ability to keep a business going. You'd imagine, therefore, that I'm going to say, yeah, Robbie, the quicker we can get back in, the better. But the reality is of any process of renegotiating, I'm probably not going to with you on the analogy about lovers and bedrooms, but it is a long process. And actually my concern is we don't have that time, because all the damage that Brexit has done, if we are going to do anything to save the British jobs, save the British businesses that are going to go bust because of this pressure, we've got to do things that we can do quickly. So the question for me is, what are those things? So, for example, something that might keep you awake at night if you're thinking about moving back in with your wife, the Pan-European Mediterranean Convention. If you're...
Just to be clear, he's still with her.
I'm still with her.
I didn't want to make any presumptions. Didn't want to make any presumptions.
But the analogy would be, how do you handle the kids when you're divorced? Because that's the territory we're in now. We need to be civilised. We need to get on as well as we can with the European Union. We need to make it work as well as possible for the next generation. But unfortunately, I think the idea of going back in is fantasy.
But we also need to do things that don't make it any worse. So, for example, some of the decisions about the electric car industry, the Pan-European Mediterranean Convention could really help with that. So we could rejoin something like that. Erasmus. I don't understand why we didn't keep Erasmus open for our young people. And yes, we've got to look at access to the single market. The question for me is how quickly we can do things to repair the damage. I'm more hopeful than you, Guto, that we can actually repair that damage, but more resolute that given how destructive Brexit has been, the priority is what do you do in that small window we've got before literally anything you do will make no difference at all, because the jobs are gone, the industry's gone, and all the opportunities are gone.
I'm really interested to hear what Jim thinks about this, because, given that he represents the seat in Northern Ireland, you've got quite a big dog in this race.
Well, I'm not quite sure if we're a big dog or not, but maybe I haven't got sharp enough teeth. No, the fact of the matter is I'm a Brexiteer through and through, supported 100%. Unfortunately, the Brexit that we were promised wasn't the Brexit that we got. We've ended up in a halfway house. People say it's the best of both worlds. No, it's not. It's the worst of both worlds, because we're stuck in between the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, where we wish to be part of and to be. I think it was Margaret Thatcher had said that Northern Ireland is as British as Finchley. Well, no, we're not anymore. So whenever, why was Brexit important to me? It was important to my constituents. The majority of people in Strangford voted for Brexit. I have a big fishing village, Portavogie, probably one of the biggest ones, and second biggest one in Northern Ireland, after Kilkeel and just above Ardglass. But for me, fishing was critical, because we've been strangled and choked by bureaucracy and red tape from Brussels over the years. We weren't able to catch this fish, we couldn't catch that fish, we couldn't catch enough of them, they were on quotas. All these things conspired. In Portavogie, and my constituency, 99.9% of the people who could vote, and that doesn't count unborn children, by the way, they voted to leave the EU and support of Brexit.
But in Northern Ireland in general, Northern Ireland voted to remain.
Oh, well, I mean, yes, the majority of people in Northern Ireland, but my constituency, 52% of them who I knew they would, were in favour. I mean, you could say this, take the same argument, by the way, and take a constituency in England or Scotland, or they voted to remain. Does that mean that they actually stay and the other part doesn't? I think what we've got to remember, with respect, if you don't mind me saying so, it's the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. No, that means the decision's taken by everybody, and whatever the joint majority decision is, that's the one that matters. But the Conservative Party, forgive me, have screwed us. That's a fact. And they've let us down over and over and over. Boris Johnson sat at our party conference. I must say, he didn't sway me, but maybe I'm a canny Ulster man, and a smile and a hand on the shoulder doesn't win me over, you know.
Well, that's to ask what does.
Well, honesty wins me, Stella, every time. They were not honest with us, and that's the worrying thing about it. So Boris Johnson promised us a Brexit the same as the rest of the United Kingdom. It didn't arrive, and we become less British in Northern Ireland whenever I love my Britishness, and the people that I represent love it as well. So disappointingly, we got a Brexit we didn't want, not the Brexit we were promised, and unfortunately we're in this halfway house now where the bureaucracy that we hoped would disappear has actually got worse. Businesses in my constituency now tell me that the red tape and Stella mentioned about a charge coming. Yeah. With my constituents who want to bring postage or letters from across the water, there's a charge in that there because it's coming over. Seeds, plants and seeds.
If I send something with Every or Hermes or whatever they're called now to Northern Ireland, I'm now paying £2 more than I'm paying to send it anywhere else in the United Kingdom, which I think is an outrage.
It's absolutely scandalous, and that's one of the. It's not just as because dishonesty, and we ended up not getting what we were promised, but it's now become financially inhibiting in relation to the cost that everyone has to pay. I know people who ordered seeds from companies, that's for the garden, obviously, across the water, and they suddenly found that there was a charge of £5, not £2, £5. People who used to order across the water online. For instance, these are examples. A horse's rug, which was for their horse. I have a lot of people in my constituency who are into horses in big ways, and one of those was it was £35 to buy online before Brexit and before we got the deal we didn't want, and it's now £55 to £65. So these charges have all been levered upon those people, us who want to be Brexiteers.
Let's hear from Martha.
Excuse me. Yeah.
I just really want to go back to Guto's analogy of the marriage.
See what you started.
Yeah. Like any divorce, lawyers make a killing, by the way, and that's been the story of Brexit. It's been a massive distraction, cost a fortune, but sorry, Martha.
Yeah, okay, sorry.
Well, the thing is, basically, I don't think rejoining would actually be that much of a problem when it comes to the EU. I mean, you need a number of things to rejoin from scratch. You basically need to show that you've got the same values, and you show you're stable democracy. You need the green light from the European Commission, which it sounds like we've got. And then there's talks. But as a recent member, I think we'll kind of skip over that.
Would we not have
quickly.
to join the euro? Isn't that a condition of membership now?
I don't think. I think there are lots of exceptions, and I think that we would. I think that it would be easier than we. I think the main barrier would be in terms of British politics, in terms of the impossibility of saying that you're going to rejoin as a politician. Do you know what? I think it's softening on the European side, and I think it wouldn't be so hard to rejoin.
But you see, speaking as somebody who, like Jim, voted for Brexit, to my mind, if we went back into the EU, if you're going to do that, well, you go back in lock, stock and barrel. Part of the problem that we had as members of the EU is that we were never fully in. We were also
we had a really good deal.
Half-out status.
We had a really good deal, and it's not impossible to imagine that we might have that again. Like other countries do have kind of opt-outs from all the conditions that everyone has to abide by.
I think we have to be honest. Jim chose to leave his wife. He's now not that keen on the mistress.
We're married 36 years, by the way, so...
but you've got to make a choice, haven't you? You've got to make... Because now you know what Brexit has to deliver. I'm less confident because I think it is quite a lot for us. We took up a huge amount of airtime in Europe And, there are other things happening. There's a war on our border. There's a big issue in terms of migration. The cost of living crisis is not hit. Obviously, actually, we've been hit harder because of Brexit, but those are issues that our colleagues in Europe are dealing with as well. Any form of renegotiation. I mean, Ukraine is on a fast-track process for negotiation, and that's still talking about 7 years or so. So I as somebody who, like Guto, did not want to leave, but recognises that we have, I think we have to live in that. Like, Jim, you and I have to make a call, because we can't keep talking about a kind of fantasy other bus that we could have got onto Brexit. This is Brexit. The question is, what do you do about the damage? You're right about the fishermen. The fishermen and women have been sold down the river by Brexit. They need an answer, not somebody saying, I didn't mean that. So we've got to make a call. Are you going to go back to your wife or not?
Well, I've stayed with her 36 years. So still happening.
The political reality is, though, that the leader of the Labour Party, so whoever it is within the next 10 years, the leader of the Conservative Party, whoever it is within the next 10 years, they're never going to suggest it.
No. Well, the other challenge, of course, is if you're Europe and we're asking them to expend capital on a relationship, they've got to be confident that we're going to be stable about it. So I think there is a question about what's stable in the UK. What I think Robbie is pointing at is that the public are not daft. They can see that Brexit is causing problems, and people trying to say all these problems are due to with the pandemic, it doesn't wash with them anymore. My concern is that Brexit is going to keep giving more problems. So A, we've got to be honest about that, and B, we've got to come up with solutions. And that's why, for me, as chair of the Labour Movement for Europe, I'm really focused on what can we actually achieve within the next 18 months that might save jobs, save businesses, and might at least limit some of the damage that people in Strangford or people in Walthamstow or even people in West Ham are dealing with right now because of Brexit. I know, but I know you're a fan.
I am. I don't think it's actually affected my football club particularly. In fact, we won a European competition, so it's been a great thing for us. Yeah. Listen, I think we should move on. We are going to talk about this after 9 o'clock, and it's going to be the return of Femi.
We're going to talk about the mistress.
The return of... Well, Femi isn't my mistress, but you never know. He's going to be joining me to talk about what Ursula von der Leyen has been saying today, and we'll get more of your views on that on the phones as well. It's 17 minutes past 8.
This is LBC.
MJ, the electrifying new musical direct from Broadway. Michael Jackson's unique and unparalleled artistry comes to the West End stage. MJ, the 4-time Tony Award-winning musical, starting something in London this March. Book now at mjthemusical.com.
This is it.
Level 23.
Final round. Let's go.
Let's go. Almost.
Help.
Guys.
I need
more
power. Turbocharge your gaming and reduce lag with EE Game Mode. Even when everyone's online, this is broadband made for gaming from the UK's fastest major broadband provider. Search EE Broadband, powered by BT.
EE Game Mode requires EE Smart Hub Plus. To verify, see ee.co.uk/claims.
My granny visits Specsavers. No chance.
No, my daughter doesn't go to Specsavers.
You're having a laugh. My sister goes to Specsavers.
Specsavers? For my mum, it's out of the question.
Dad? Oh, he hasn't been to Specsavers in years.
If your loved ones can't make it into a Specsavers store, it's easy to arrange home visits. Our opticians are caring and highly trained. To find out if your loved ones are eligible, visit our website.
You hear that? That's the sound of your energy use going in reverse. Rewinding, reducing. We're OVO, an energy company that wants you to use less energy. Some may see that as a bit backwards, but we like to see things differently. Join us and see energy from a different angle. OVO.
I want to live.
OK, this might not be something you hear every day, but your next poo could save your life. Just a tiny sample detects signs of cancer before you notice anything wrong. That's how NHS bowel cancer screening kits help to save thousands of lives a year. It's so simple, yet one of the most important things you'll do. So, if one lands on your doormat, put it by the loo. Don't put it off.
'Twas the night before Christmas when all through our home,
friends were waiting for drinks at the party we'd thrown. With an espresso martini mixer from Fever Tree, all you need to add is the vodka, you see. 5 espresso martinis ready in a second. A Christmas miracle, everybody reckoned. So this holiday season, mix with the best with Fever Tree cocktails for you and your guests. Please enjoy responsibly.
Leading Britain's conversation. Cross Question with Iain Dale. Alexa, send a comment to LBC.
21 minutes past 8. We have on our panel tonight Stella Creasy, Labour MP for Walthamstow, Guto Harri, former Downing Street Director of Communications, Jim Shannon, DUP MP for Strangford, and Martha Gill, columnist for The Observer. Well, let's take a text question from Rob in Faversham. If the Immigration Minister and the Prime Minister don't agree on immigration policy, how can the government ever take back control of our borders? Now, the context to this is that Immigration Minister Robert Jenrick has told MPs that his own plan to cut legal migration would have been presented to them a year ago if he could have done. That's his quote, not mine. That Downing Street is denying that there is any rift between Jenrick and Rishi Sunak. Jim?
First of all, as human rights spokesperson and also as the chair of the APPG and freedom of religious belief, I'm very well aware across the world we have many people who are being persecuted because of their faith, and that's all faiths, by the way. It's not just one particular faith. I also find that across the world there are those who are being abused because of their faith, but also their human rights are being. I find that if you look at it clearly, you'll find that human rights and religious persecution are probably married, because if you're experiencing one, you're experiencing the other, and vice versa. So for me, I think the right of those who are persecuted across the world and who find their human rights inhibited and restricted and restrained, and who have violence and against themselves. The day we launched a report in Pakistan, which we visited in February time, just to ascertain the experiences of people there, Shias, Sikhs, Hindus, Muslims, Ahmadiyya Muslims and Christians. I'm aware that we as a country should be generous with our... But
Jenrick is talking about legal migration here.
Yeah, but I want to make sure that when I make this point, I want to come to that, I just want to say this. I think it's important that those who wish to come here and start a life here, and we should encourage them to do so. What we have in the illegal migrants that come across, I think what we have is women and children who I believe we should be reaching out to. But we also have economic migrants, those who are fit and healthy, who don't have any real reasons, perhaps in many cases, for wanting to leave the countries they're in. So we do need to have some sort of immigration control. It's not that borders open and everybody can come in as willy-nilly. We find that women and their children are sometimes separated as a result. I do not see, unfortunately, the renewal and the re-engagement of families who are separated, and sometimes in these crossings. I think there has to be a bit of more compassion when it comes to children and families and reuniting. But I do think we can't have economic migrants coming across just because they have decided they're going to legally across the channel and come across. I think at France, I say this with respect to France because we have a deal with them, but I don't perhaps see that maybe their energy has been focused in the right way when it comes to controlling the migrants and stopping them coming. Government says, and Robert Jenrick said in the chamber, I think the other day, he said it tonight as well on a different issue. Tonight it was about Sudan refugees in the chamber, but he said that they've cut migration. Well, you know something, the people aren't just sure if that's happened or not, because there's so many coming in.
The official statistics show that they haven't. It's as clear. Well, although I suppose if you compare last year to this year, you could argue that if you really wanted to. Martha?
I mean, the split we're talking about is, between the Immigration Minister and the Prime Minister. Immigration Minister said he came up with his 5-point plan. Just a few days ago, it was Suella Braverman saying she had her own 5-point plan, which the Prime Minister had rejected. I mean, this is showing a number of things. First of all, how important immigration is for the Tory party. Every election since 2010, they pledged to bring it down, and it hasn't gone down. It's rising up the public's list of concerns. They're very worried about the next election. There's a huge number of splits in all directions within the party, the right, generally maybe seeing now Robert Jenrick as their new man in town to, talk about their side of the argument. James Cleverly.
And he's never been seen as on the right.
Well, but he's representing more their side of the argument now, and maybe, James Cleverly seen as softer on the European Court of Human Rights. Those are just some of the splits in the party. So, yeah, there's going to be a lot of more mudslinging over this, I think.
Stella.
Yeah, I mean, Robert Jenrick has been the immigration minister for quite some time now, and I'm not entirely convinced that somehow Suella Braverman would have been a lock on any kind of policy that he might wanted to bring in that matches this picture. So for me, it's just a mess, and it's symptomatic. I really think it's important, Jim, to separate out people fleeing persecution, because actually when people on the boats, and the vast majority of them are from places like Iraq and Afghanistan and some from Pakistan, they're not the Albanians. The Albanians are not in the figures anymore. Actually, when they are assessed, they're assessed as having a reasonable claim to persecution. That is separate from the people who are coming here to fill labour shortages. And this government has put lots and lots of different jobs on the shortage list, and we can have that conversation. I mean, it's bonkers that actually you can undercut workers here by paying less to get somebody over. So especially in some of the higher wage jobs, it makes financial sense for firms to bring in people from overseas. That is absolutely something we can deal with. But also, I think we have to be really careful when we look at these figures. It's worth remembering of the numbers people are talking about, 300,000 are students and their families, right? And there's been a bulge of people post-COVID coming to study, international students, who we train up. And actually, a lot of those people then either go on to contribute to our economy or they leave the country. So I just think we have to be a little bit wary about looking at the figures and who actually we're talking about. Because if you want to say, right, we're going to cut the figures, are you going to say no, for example, to the people coming from Ukraine, who are another big chunk of that group of people we all recognise are fleeing Putin? Are we going to say no to the people from Hong Kong who are fleeing persecution as well? And all the while, you've got a broken jobs market in this country. So we haven't got the training, we haven't got the skills, and we're undercutting workers. None of it is about Europe. I mean, the whole point about Brexit, we were just talking about earlier, was this idea we're going to take back control of our borders. It's not people from Europe coming, and it isn't anything to do with the small boats or persecution, because actually there are lots of people fleeing persecution in this world. And rather than spending all of our time talking about gunboats in the English Channel, maybe if we actually talk to our colleagues in other countries about how to manage that so that we each play our part. And bear in mind, this country plays a tiny part in helping refugees compared to other countries around the world. We could manage that better so that we could then focus on what it is about our economy that needs that injection.
But we have been doing that. I mean, whatever you think of Priti Patel and Suella Braverman, they spent half their life talking to the French about trying to stop people coming over the channel.
But they didn't talk about the thing that would actually make a difference, which is having a processing, which is what we used to do, and actually saying, right, how are we going to manage this? Because people, nothing in their legislation targets the traffickers. Nothing in their legislation is clearly stopping the thing we all want to stop, which is people taking dangerous journeys. Everybody keeps talking about safe routes. We don't have them. I've got constituents who helped the British forces in Afghanistan, but because they have British citizenship, they can't bring their families here. So their families are at direct risk of harm. This system is broken. I just think Robert Jenrick and the way he talks about it, he's going to be gobsmacked when he finds out who's been in charge for the last 13 years, because it's not us, it's him.
Guto.
We do have safe routes, and one of the issues with the small boats is that you see men, largely men, queue jumping. So you have families sitting patiently in UN camps in godforsaken parts of the planet, waiting to have their applications processed, but the system is jammed with young men who get into boats and leave France. And I have to say, if I tried to go to France, if the two of us got in a dinghy tonight and tried to land in France, they would spot us. They would see us. So the idea they can't see all these boats leaving is ridiculous. But that's a side issue for me. I think we've got ourselves into a terrible mess where there's now a fetish with numbers rather than whether we need these people. Because as you rightly say, a lot of them are students. And we should celebrate that in a fiercely competitive global market that our best universities attract some of the best people from all over the world here rather than to America or anywhere else. A lot of them are from Hong Kong. We thought that was a good thing to do. We owed them a certain obligation because of a century of etc. etc. The same with Ukraine. And as for the rest, I'm not sure. Obviously, people fleeing persecution deserve our help, but I don't see a problem with economic migrants. If there's a highly qualified engineer who's prepared to travel halfway around the world and come here and help us build what's left of HS2, or help us build Crossrail, or to serve in the NHS, where nearly half the people there are sort of trained and qualified abroad, then why do we want to sort of stop that? And if they come here and start a business and contribute to the economy and pay their rent and actually go out in the evening and spend money, why do we want to stop those people? Because we have a fetish with numbers.
We want to stop that because irresponsible politicians have created this environment where every immigrant is seen as somebody who shouldn't be in this country.
So let's change that debate rather than cause ourselves another act of self-harm.
You need to stop doing what you just did, which is first of all claiming that there isn't a safe route from Iran. Show me the safe route. I've worked with women being persecuted in Iran. There is no safe route. How do you expect people fleeing persecution, people like Jim cares about? There isn't. What's the safe route from Iran?
There are people in UN camps all over the place. They can make an application.
What is the safe route from Iran?
They don't get here because at the moment the system is so clogged. The people,
there isn't a safe route. You haven't got time to wait around for bureaucracy when you're fleeing for your life.
They're not fleeing Iran. They're fleeing France. They've got to France. It's a safe country.
So then be honest.
They're not a threat
then
in
be
France.
Honest that you don't want. Well, then be honest that you don't want us to take any refugees. Because if you do want us to take refugees,
I don't
then
think
there has
there's
to be
a case
about
for
how many
crossing
people
from France to Britain because you're in danger in France.
We are an island nation.
Would you like to say that there are at risk of persecution in France?
I mean, actually, I've been to the camps in Calais.
Because that will escalate the diplomatic row a lot.
I've seen how the French treat them.
This is a tiny proportion of them. There's sort of, I feel like, at least as far as the government's concerned, there's been a conflation of the small boats issue and the sort of human rights issue there and the net numbers. And of course, we have to remember that that's about 7% of the overall net numbers. And most of the increase in the bulk is to do with health workers bringing dependents over and also students bringing dependents over, which is something, we have to balance.
Are we surprised by that? Are we surprised that a doctor, him or her, wants to bring his or her partner?
No, but as you say,
students, I think, are a different case here.
But as you say, we have to take the ideology out of this. This should be something based sort of on the balance between how many people our economy needs and how many people our infrastructure can take. Surely, that's the
just a final point here. That the point that I was making on political leadership here. I mean, Stella, you must have been slightly uncomfortable last week with Keir Starmer's remarks about the immigration figures, where he was basically saying they were an absolute disgrace. We shouldn't be having so many people coming into the country. That's not what I would have expected from a Labour leader.
Where I absolutely agree is I don't think we should be allowing workers here to be undercut, because I want to see the national living wage in the care sector, and at the moment the care sector is being undercut by companies importing people in, and that isn't good for anybody. And I think what people are recognising, and I agree with you about the numbers, it's not the numbers, it's the practices within that sector and what it means. But if you want to tackle the hostile environment where people are criticising immigrants, when so many contributions have been made to our society and our country by immigration, it isn't disconnected to the way in which people talk about the people in the small boats and the way in which people talk about refugees.
I have to draw this one to a close, I'm afraid. It's 8:33 news time. Charlotte Morgan has the headlines.
Israel's military says it's investigating claims by Hamas that its youngest hostage, a 10-month-old, has been killed by an airstrike in Gaza. The pause in violence is due to end tomorrow morning, but there are discussions in Qatar over a possible second extension. A 13-year-old who killed a woman after running her over with her own car will serve a 2-year prison sentence. Marcia Grant, who was 60, was seriously injured outside her home in Sheffield in April. And Nottingham City Council has declared itself effectively bankrupt. It says it can't deliver on its legal requirement to balance the budget this year. LBC weather, snow showers in the east, some light rain along coastal areas with patchy rain in the west, a low of -4.
This is LBC.
Unbeatable value that's too good to miss at Iceland and the Food Warehouse. Save £2.50 on Pepsi Max 24 packs, now just £7.50. If Pepsi Max isn't your thing, we have 18 cans of Coca-Cola Diet and Zero for only £6. Pair it with a crunch of Pringles for only £1.50 per tube. Shop and save on hundreds of your favourite products at Iceland and the Food Warehouse. Find your local store at iceland.co.uk. For terms, see iceland.co.uk/terms.
Go, get in! Move it! What's wrong with the car?
Flat battery.
What?
You absolute...
It's okay, lads. I'm with the AA.
Oh, lovely.
With more expert patrols in more places, we'll get you back on the road in no time. Join the UK's best breakdown service from $7.50 a month. The AA, always ahead. New customers only, T's and C's apply. Verify best and patrol numbers at theaa.com/best.
OK then, class.
Class pass, Jade. See you all
tomorrow. All right.
Look, I got 12
messages. Look what's trending.
Go on, send it.
Post it.
What?
Why, bro?
Why are they writing that?
What are they saying?
Growing up with phones isn't easy. EE Learn has the tools to help kids' well-being, studies, and every kind of lesson. For every kid on any network. Search EE Learn.
HGVs have 4 zones around them where their visibility is limited. At the front, back, and both sides. If you don't know where they are, you could be sitting in one without even realising. Know the zones. Pass safely, and where possible, don't linger next to an HGV. Look out for each other. Search Know the Zones. National Highways.
You can do this. You're Tom Daly. You know the routine. 30 degrees with a gentle spin, knitted jumpers in first, pirouette to the trunks, detergent.
Perform better on Sundays. Get half-price electricity, 11 a.m. till 4 p.m. with Peak Save from British Gas. Proud partners of Team GB and Paralympics GB. Ends 31st of December. T's and C's apply. Smart meter required.
Cross Question with Iain Dale on LBC. Call 0345 6060 973.
Stella, Creasy, Guto, Harri, Jim, Shannon and Martha Gill with us taking your calls and texts. Here's one from Harriet in Chester. Is the lasting truce in Gaza giving you hope for the future or fear that Hamas will survive? Now, the truce has now been going on for 5 days, with sources saying both sides are discussing a further extension of 4 days beyond tomorrow. Martha.
Well, obviously it's very hopeful the truce has been extended, particularly because this means a release of more hostages, but I can't really believe that it'll turn into a lasting truce rather than just a ceasefire. I mean,
why?
What do others think? It just seems unlikely to me.
Is that because you think Israel is determined to restart military action against Hamas, or you think that there is no way that Hamas will agree to a longer-term ceasefire?
I think probably both, actually.
OK. Stella?
Well, I've been working with a family from my constituency who have a member who's a hostage for the last 6 weeks, and it's just been agony, absolute agony. So I welcome every day longer because it gives us an opportunity that he might be one of the people who's released, and also we want all the hostages to be released. I think all of those are temporary solutions to a longer-term challenge here. Like, how do we get to a point not just to have a ceasefire? And I'm somebody who wanted a ceasefire for weeks because you were thinking there is no military solution to this long-term.
Do you vote against your party?
I voted to both motions because humanitarian pauses can be part of a ceasefire, but I was also very clear that a ceasefire had to be all sides. It had to be the release of all the hostages, and it had to be aid, because otherwise it wasn't a ceasefire. It's not a ceasefire if you only ask one side to stop firing. And so what we're seeing now, we know that negotiations were taking place. We know the negotiations keep needing to take place. We know that the international community has to be part of that process because there are bad faith actors on all sides, frankly, who are talking about the expulsion of people from Gaza, and also Hamas saying they would do again what they did on the 7th of October. the question for all of us is, what is the alternative if that process does fall down? So I don't think any of us want to question that, because the opportunity that we see now is that people are being released, aid is getting in, and the opportunity to say, OK, what are the next steps towards a longer-term process comes from that process. But it is a day-by-day experience. And I was talking to my constituent earlier this evening, she's in Israel at the moment, and it just does feel very bleak. So I don't think we should be under any illusions about how difficult all of this is, but we should all be rooting for it to work, and we should all be saying a ceasefire is the start of the next process, not the end of it.
Jim Shannon.
I think we have to look back into where it all started. It started because Israel had they probably regret it, but they certainly were not as strong against the Gaza Strip and North Gaza, and against perhaps Hamas as they probably should have been. They attacked, and I'm really surprised that the Israelis were not aware of it, because their intelligence is normally so good. They murdered 1,200 Israelis, injured 3,500, and kidnapped 265 approximately. What's the duty of any country? The duty of this country, United Kingdom, if it happened in the United Kingdom or if it happened in Israel, is to protect its people. And that's the first thing. So those Hamas terrorists who are sworn to eradicate every Israeli and the state of Israel. So whenever you want a ceasefire, I can understand that those ceasefires that were asked for in the votes in the chamber, I couldn't support. If it had been on the table, the Lib Dem one, as an example, I certainly would have probably felt that the bilateral ceasefire would be something that we could all... And why would that be? Because that means that the Hamas terrorists, as they are, would have to agree to do away with their eradication and killing of all Israelis and the eradication of the Israeli state. If that had been on the table, we would have been in a different place. So what's...
Jim, it was. I'm really sorry I have to, because I would not have voted for anything that was a unilateral ceasefire. That's exactly what it was.
It wasn't, because that wasn't on the table that I seen. The issue for us then in relation to Israel, and I'm a supporter of Israel, always have been. I've been a friend of Israel when I was in the Assembly back in Northern Ireland. I'm a friend of Israel here in Westminster. I wear the badge. I don't wear the badge because I'm trying to tell everybody something. I wear the badge because I mean it. So for me, Israel has got to eradicate every Hamas terrorist that there is. That's their goal. That's their job to do, and that's what. Now, have we got some sort of a solution at the minute? A pause? Well, we have a pause because the other thing that Israel wants, they want their 265 kidnapper people back as well. So those pauses are related to prison releases. Some of those have spent probably most all those last 55 days in underground cellars and basements across. So the pause is a short-term pause because Hamas has to be eradicated and taken off the. And I'd say this just one last point, please, if you don't mind, because when Hamas are finished and they're no longer an organisation, then I believe that Israel has to look at the two-state solution. Because it's not all about eradicating and finishing terrorism, it's about a future, and the future has to be a two-state one.
But they have a Prime Minister who doesn't want one.
I know that, but there has to be a reality in finding a solution. I think it's probably something that Stella and I would probably have a lot in common, because I think we have to have a political solution, but it has to be one that he buys into as well. Thank you.
Guto.
You can't just kill every single person who is identified with Hamas, not least because, A, it's practically difficult, but for every one that you kill, and certainly for every 1,000 sort of civilians that are killed in that sort of relentless war at the moment, you are recruiting the next generation of Hamas fighters. They might be called something different, they might call themselves a different organisation, but every time a child is killed, there's a man out there and a woman who will devote the rest of their lives to avenging the death of their child. I would do it if I lost a child. I would want to destroy the person who destroyed them. So the idea that you kill this neat little army and then it's all fine and we can all live happily ever after, it's not going to work. It's going to be a reality there now that on both sides there is enormous resentment and anger and fear and fury, and overcoming that will be really difficult. But thank God in this hideous mix that some very creative negotiators have managed to be mature enough and pragmatic enough and imaginative enough to get beyond the platitudes of don't talk to terrorists, don't do this, put all these preconditions in and create some there where we can see before our very eyes how you can alleviate the suffering, how you can send in aid, how you can free hostages. Everyone is benefiting from people doing the opposite of what a lot of people wanted to rule out.
Right, we're going to move on. We could talk about that for the rest of the programme, but we've got a couple of other questions, both of which I think you're going to find some very interesting answers from our panel. Stella is laughing because she can see what a couple of them are. It's 8:45.
LBC.
Hey, Harry. Hello, mate. Got any tips for the boxing later?
Your best bet is to head over to Bet Victor. But did I ever tell you, I used to spar with a big Billy Bulldozer?
You boxed with the big Billy Bulldozer?
No, don't be daft. I just used to go to spar with him. That man loved a manicure, and those hands, massive. Let me tell you, I never seen a box with ugly hands. They're the money makers after all. Got to look after them, don't they? Anyway, got to go, pal.
Listen to Harry and make your best bet on the boxing at Bet Victor. 18 plus, be gamble aware.
A new energy-efficient boiler from British Gas can save you up to 22% on gas bills. That's a 22% saving on warm nights in. Cozy cats. Oof. And shower discos. Save money with the new energy-efficient boiler from British Gas. And you can even spread the cost with up to 4 years interest-free credit. Search British Gas, new boiler. Credit subject to status. Credit broker not a lender. Using panel of lenders for savings, see website.
Just going out to play with Fletcher.
Have you had a shower?
Yeah.
Ah, how was it?
Amazing. Really hot and powerful. It was like the best shower ever. I'm so clean now.
Archie, did you actually go in the shower?
No.
Love a hot shower? Come to Swell Heating. We've been keeping the southeast warm for over 50 years, and our expert engineers can install an A-rated Worcester Bosch boiler at a great price. Visit swellheating.com. Rely on us to keep you warm.
At Specsavers, we've got hearing aids that can stream music or movies. Ones that are good in crowds, rechargeable ones, battery ones that are good at home, ones that are good in the great outdoors, invisible ones that connect to phones, ones that fit in your ear, ones that fit over your ear, ones that fit in wherever you happen to be. Why so many? Because everyone's hearing is different, and how everyone spends their time is different. Hearing aids can make a big difference. So book a free hearing test. You're better off at Specsavers.
Girls! Sean!
Willow!
It's bedtime!
Bedtime! One more each! I'm almost done!
Okay, kiddos.
That's enough.
Time's up.
On to the app.
Your Wi-Fi is going off.
Going off.
EE Wi-Fi Controls lets you pause the Wi-Fi on your kids' devices, helping them to switch off and drift off. Search EE Home.
Eligibility criteria apply. New EE broadband customers.
Cross Question with Iain Dale on LBC.
Right, it's 8:47. Stella, Creasy, Guto, Harri, Jim, Shannon and Martha Gill with us. Text question from Simon in Barnsley. Was Dominic Cummings really Prime Minister in all but name during the pandemic? Now, Sajid Javid, who was Chancellor until February 2020 and then replaced Matt Hancock as Health Secretary in June 2021, are you with me at the back? Told the COVID inquiry today that Boris Johnson was not in charge of what was happening in his name and was largely content with Mr Cummings running the government. Incidentally, Matt Hancock appears before the inquiry tomorrow. Get your popcorn now. Guto, now just remind me of the timing, because you didn't cross over with Dominic Cummings, did you?
No, we've never been in the same room. Thankfully.
But you must have heard a lot of tales from your time in Downing Street.
Yes, and I've no doubt at all that Dominic Cummings thought he was Prime Minister. The arrogance of the guy is utterly breathless. Beyond belief. So there, at the heart of government, you had this dysfunctional, autistic, psychopath who thought that everybody else in Britain was stupid, and who not only now is telling us that he thought Boris Johnson was stupid, not fit to govern, but thought so at the time. And shockingly,
as evidenced in Nadine Dorris's book.
And shockingly, in a little cosy WhatsApp group with a man who's meant to be the most senior civil servant in the UK. Can you imagine any of those class acts who've led the civil service in a little group with the director of comms and with the chief of staff slagging off the person who'd appointed them? It's astonishing. Now, in reality, I don't think he was. He had far too much power, and shame on Boris, and I think he regrets this more than anything else in the world, that he allowed him to accumulate that power so that every minister had not a spad who was looking after his or her interests, but answering to Dom Cummings. It's like having a sort of, spy right next to you in your own department. So the centralising of power was astonishing. The delicious paradox to me that nobody has pointed out yet is, if Dominic Cummings was this powerful, then whose fault was the enormous cock-ups that happened here? Him. So he can't have it both ways. If he was that powerful, if he was that central, then all the bad judgments made are on him. So he's got to decide whether he was powerless and he can blame Boris for the bad decisions, or did he have the power, and he certainly had far too much, and so he's culpable in most of the things that went wrong.
And you can hear more tales like that in your unprecedented podcast, can't you?
You certainly can. Still available on Global Player.
It is.
And on whichever other platform you listen to, including Spotify, etc.
Stella?
I mean, much as I'm taken aback by the description of Dominic Cummings as the High Sparrow of the Boris Johnson administration, I really feel for Lady Hallett, who is desperately trying to run an inquiry to actually find out what we would learn about dealing with something like a pandemic, because God forbid something like that happen again. I don't know if we're learning very much from this, apart from the fact that Boris was fundamentally unfit to be Prime Minister, because ultimately he did pick him.
We haven't heard his side of the story on that, have we? So,
well, we will next week, because apparently he's giving evidence for 5 days.
Well, I agree with Stella. At the moment, this is like a sort of pantomime rather than an inquiry. And it's all sort of geared to sort of saying, if only we'd had a Prime Minister who wasn't Boris Johnson, it'd all be fine. Now, if that's the conclusion, it's a useless waste of money, because he won't be Prime Minister next time around. No, but next time round he won't be Prime Minister. So if we pretend that all will be well, he's not the one who came back.
No, but he could do.
Yeah,
Martha.
I agree that the inquiry is just prosecuting personalities rather than the systems, which of course need to be made better in case this ever happens again. But the irony really about Dominic Cummings there is that he is someone who identified lots of problems with the system. He hates all systems. He wants everything to be run by a small team of freelancing geniuses, given huge wide latitude. But the interaction of that attitude with the systems, which he was right, are not quite fit for purpose in government, the kind of collision of those two things managed to create a system which was both incredibly slow and inefficient, and a lot of sort of weird freelancing going on within it. So yes.
Jim?
Yeah, I can't say I know very much about Dominic. I never met him in my life. My impressions would be of someone in my staff. I have 7 staff. I seek, and I do have, loyalty and commitment, because I treat them in the way that I would wish them to treat me. So I get what I ask for from them. I'm also big enough to ask for advice on something. If I don't have all the answers, I talk these things over with my staff. I seek their advice. I'm very fortunate to have a young lady that I've known probably all her life, because it's the nature of the age of myself. She's incredibly wise, barrister, good brain, has the same cultural and moral code that I have in my life. So therefore, when I ask questions, I know that she can reply to me in a way. I seek loyalty. Quite clearly, I would suggest that Dominic Raab didn't. Dominic
Raab was very loyal.
Dominic Raab said something else altogether.
Had not the same loyalty to Boris Johnson, perhaps he should have. So it is disappointing to have that. But I think if you want to have be in government, you have to make the. I make the decisions in my office, and I do that after discussion with my staff. I think that's the way it should be. Quite clearly, Boris handed over power to others, which then reflects on him. And the fact was that during this whole COVID inquiry that was seen, where we all lost loved ones and lost someone who were incredibly close to us, compassion was lacking in some of the people that I've seen in power.
Just something, I've had quite a few texts on a phrase that you used, Guto, there, where you used autism in a slightly unfortunate way. Do you want to sort of...
Well, I mean it in the sense of not having any sort of regard to the consequences of his actions, not being aware of how what he does sort of is seen by the people around him and the people who can see him from far away. So I think if people really want to get nerdy about that, they're missing the point. My point is that he thinks that the British people are stupid enough to believe him that he could drive 100 miles or whatever it was to test his eyesight. The level of contempt for the British public is something that I think is a condition. And, you know, I'm deliberately trying to say that this is not just somebody who's slightly unself-aware, but is got a very, very serious problem with that.
I think autism isn't a negative thing. I think what you mean is arrogance.
Of course not.
So
Yeah. Well, let's move on to Katie in Leeds, who says MPs are trying to stop women from going to prison for having to have an abortion. Why do men still want to control women's bodies through ancient laws? Now, Labour's Dame Diana Johnson intends to amend the Criminal Justice Act to repeal sections of the law which were originally passed in 1861, which criminalise having an abortion after 24 weeks. Jim, I'm going to come to you first on this.
Stella and I will have a difference of opinions in this. I suppose really at the end of the day, I believe in the sanctity of life. It's a very clear ethos in my life and where I am. So I see the unborn baby as a living person from its conception right through until the time that it's born. I've probably formed and shaped and guided by my beliefs in that as well. And I believe that I genuinely reflect the majority of the people in my constituency on the volume of mails, emails, letters, correspondence, chats I get from people I meet in the street.
But do you believe that women should be going to prison for having an abortion?
I personally don't think that's right. No, I don't, and I would be. I try to be compassionate in my life, and I'm not better than anybody else. But I'm far from better than anybody else. But I try to lead a life where I can see how others get through life. But I do believe sincerely that abortion is wrong. It's my belief, in all honesty. I think the law the government brought in here at Westminster and disregarded the views of those in the province in relation to where we were is something that I take great exception to. I think they pushed an abortion law upon the people of Northern Ireland. And by the way, I'm a unionist tradition, but I can say this, that many of the people who contacted me also were from a nationalist tradition who held the same high moral opinion, biblical opinion, some may say, as I say it was, but also a moral opinion, because we think it's wrong to take a life.
All right.
And that's where I am.
Stella.
And I've always respected your view, Jim, and I've always tried to act respectfully. I'm also tabling an amendment which is about the decriminalisation of abortion, because I think we can all agree that we want, if people are going to have this procedure, for it to be safe and legal and ideally properly regulated. For me, the question is, why are women going to prison? It's because we have a piece of legislation. Indeed, why are women who've had stillbirths being investigated by the police when they've had a stillbirth? It's because we have a piece of legislation that was written in the 1600s that says that any of those things could be suspect. And I think both of us might disagree about the right to choose, but we can at least agree in those circumstances, the idea when somebody's had a stillbirth, they should have a knock on the door from a police constable rather than a counsellor is wrong. I think we can learn lessons from Northern Ireland about having a human rights approach, and I would respectively say, if you want to be part of the United Kingdom, to have variations in the human rights of our constituents isn't an appropriate thing to do. I think every woman in England, Wales, Scotland and Northern Ireland should have the same equal right to choose, and at the moment they don't. So I hope as the course of this debate moves on, we can agree that we don't want to see women going to prison. We can agree that we need to have strict regulation that makes it medically safe and makes it legal. And we can also agree that there should be equality. And I hope that's the debate that we'll have. And
Martha.
I mean, we've seen what can happen in a sort of supposedly progressive Western nation when laws to do with criminalising abortion are rolled back, and you get to the situation in some states in America where you cannot have an abortion when you have an ectopic pregnancy and people's lives are being put at risk, and sometimes even people are dying. So, I mean, really, I think that the fact that there's anything in our legislation which criminalises abortion is wrong. I mean, really, you might say on one side of the argument that it's, life is sacred, but on the other side, what you're talking about really is forced birth, if you are preventing women from having an abortion, and that is a human rights issue.
Guto.
I just feel desperately sorry for any woman who gets to that point, because if it's beyond 24 weeks, then clearly the system has failed her. And if the system was operating properly, then you wouldn't be at that late stage finally getting the sort of help to do what you presumably wanted to do much earlier on.
Now, we just have time for our fun question from Alistair in Sutton. After Jim Shannon called grey squirrels the Hamas of the squirrel world yesterday, which animal do you have a real vendetta against, and why? Choose your words carefully, because I'm the one that has to look at the text screen afterwards. Now, Jim, why were you spurred on to call grey squirrels the Hamas of the squirrel world?
Well, I'm a great believer in pest control. Okay. The fact of the matter is that the very presence of grey squirrels it means the death of the red squirrels. I believe in the iconic red squirrel. I've involved in many projects back home: Mount Stewart, Ballywalter, Rosemount, and Grey Abbey. All projects where the red squirrel they're trying to save him or save it. The grey squirrel carries a pox. It kills all the red squirrels. So I think the way
there's no two squirrel state solution.
You're not just being colourist then.
So I'm very much in favour of the Labour Reds, but not the Greys.
Okay, Martha.
Against grey squirrels. What's wrong with grey squirrels? Why?
They're rats with tails.
No, but why are red squirrels so much better? I don't get it. Anyway, they're not really that endangered. There are lots of other species which are way more endangered. Anyway, my vendetta is against moths. Clothes moths.
Yeah.
I was told that you could guard against these with cedar and lavender, so I was trying to do it like that. But you
chemicals.
It's a lie.
Full-on chemicals.
You have to do it with chemicals.
Mosquitoes.
Why
are mosquitoes suddenly mosquitoes are the thing that, I mean, I don't know whether any people in London are facing this winter. I've been absolutely bitten to death by them.
In Walthamstow.
They are the Hezbollah, clearly, in this. I'm getting bitten to death by mosquitoes.
Okay. Guto.
I don't have vendettas other than with Dominic Cummings, but I would probably say wasps, because a little bit like mosquitoes, they can ruin a perfectly nice summer's evening with a glass of Aperol or wherever. Or
What evolutionary purpose do they serve?
Exactly. They're utterly useless other than to cause pain.
They are the Dominic Cummings. They are the Dominic Cummings of your world.
You are, so wasps. Not the rugby club.
Well, I shall nominate rats. I just
how 2013 of you, Ian.
Rats. So you don't regret calling grey squirrels the Hamas of the squirrel world then, Jim?
I believe in pest control, whether it be foxes, whether it be crows, pigeons, or in this case.
God, we're going to go through every animal soon, aren't we? Listen, thank you all very much indeed to Stella, Creasy, Guto, Harri, Jim Shannon and Martha Gill. On Monday's panel, we have the director of the Big Brother Watch campaign group, Silky Carlo, the Conservative MP Flick Hammond, plus another couple of panellists who will surprise you with on Monday, which basically means Corey hasn't booked them yet. In a moment, we are going to talk about Brexit. Yes, we are. It's pantomime season, isn't it? I vowed never to ever do a Brexit phone-in ever again, but Ursula von der Leyen has provoked me into doing so, because she says the UK should rejoin the EU to fix Brexit. Now, I wonder how many of you would like to reopen the Brexit debate and have all of those wounds on public display again for years and years and years to come. Or maybe you think that given the way that Brexit has worked out,